My name is Zachary Daniels. I am a composer and entrepreneur. I do a lot of stuff. I also teach at a couple local universities. I work with the Chamber Symphony. I do some work with a lot of other groups. I write a lot of music for string orchestras in particular and orchestras also. And over the years, I've gained a lot of knowledge through music and other means of how crowdfunding and similar operations work. And that's, again, something that me and Eduardo had talked about a little bit because I mentioned, yeah, crowdfunding isn't too big of a problem with me. And then I just listed off a couple of things I'd done. He's like, oh, you should probably help the others figure this out because it turns out this is kind of an unknown art. Let's go ahead and get started. So, what is crowdfunding? Crowdfunding, kind of at a macro level, it is a means of funding your creative work utilizing typically social media and other similar platforms to essentially find micro sponsors interested in backing your music. So, instead of going up to someone and saying, hey, will you give me $2,000 so that I can write this piano and string quartet piece, or just this piano and cello piece, whatever you feel like, maybe you just go to say 100 different people and see if each of those people is willing to give you a significantly smaller amount. And that is effectively the root of what crowdfunding is. And this total impact that you can get is highly dependent on your personal outreach. Personal outreach is defined as the amount of people you can reach through social media. So if you have 100 Twitter followers, you have 200 people following your Facebook page, your total reach is considered 300, even though there's some overlap there. That's how things are figured on the back end. So basically, the higher your total reach on all social media, even things like YouTube, Vimeo, things like that, the better results you will have because the better chances you'll run into someone that is willing to back your project. GoFundMe is a very popular platform for one-time donations. There's also a lot of services that you can set up if you know how to code or you want to work with PayPal. You can set up a system with them that doesn't take too much research. There are typically hundreds of guides written just within the last couple months for each of them just on YouTube that you can run through in 5 minutes flat and be ready to accept donations. And then there's another venue, one that is kind of led by Patreon, for those I've heard of that. And that's more akin to a subscription model as far as it goes. So instead of, hi, I'm going to give you $10 today, it's, I'm going to pay you $10 monthly until I cancel it. And that's a great way for someone to become kind of a long-time backer or a long-time Patreon. It's a very wonderful platform. It's actually used by a lot of content creators online. It's used by a lot of indie game companies. It's used by a lot of smaller artists trying to push out their first CD. That's a very widely used platform. And either of these platforms, these are the two kind of top ones. So GoFundMe for kind of one-off quick donations. Patreon for, hey, I want to set up kind of a subscription model so that people can back me for months or a year at a time for typically a smaller amount, sometimes larger amounts, but we'll get to that later. And if there are any questions, please feel free to type them in the chat. I would be happy to address them. So how do I do it? How do I do this now that I've introduced the concept? So the first step is to create a page on one of the many available crowdfunding platforms that exist online. You share this page online via Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Vimeo, any social media platform you use. Just, yeah, share it. You can put it in your little bio line. You can make an occasional Facebook post, or if you say have a group of friends that you all kind of tweet at each other, you can sometimes throw that into the mix. If you're posting videos of your music or work in progress music on YouTube or something similar, you can throw a link on that as well. And you won't always see immediate returns. It's more about long-term returns whenever you're doing those type of things. So you share this page online, just a direct link. Don't tell people, hey, go to GoFundMe and search for me. You need to give them a direct link. So like, for instance, you might go to like patreon.com/ Rob's music or / Sergio Rodriguez music, whatever you might feel is the best situation for you. And an important thing here is to update your backers on progress and continue to push it on socials while still striving to get new backers, because it's not just about getting new backers. It's about satisfying your backers, giving them something that they effectively want in return, which we'll get to in a moment, and also kind of showing, hey, I'm not at 0% anymore. I'm 30% there. I'm 50% there. I'm 80% there. Hey, I'm 95% there. I just need help crossing that finish line, because sometimes that last little bit is the hardest, because people will see, oh, they're 90% to their goal. It's done. But that's when you really got to kind of ramp it up, because you got to remind people, hey, I'm not over the finish line yet. Don't ditch me yet. Don't abandon me yet. So again, links everywhere. Your personal website, if you have a blog, mention it there. If you have a personal website or a blog, I recommend kind of a permanent link. That would be really beneficial. And then you can kind of reactivate it whenever it's in use, deactivate it whenever you're not pushing it as hard. And that is exceedingly important to do. And this is huge. No email lists. Just no mass emailing, because you're going to be eventually going to be found to be a spammer by Gmail and all the other big ones, and your personal email address is going to be barred from things, and you don't want that. And also, people just don't tend to respond to calls for help via email these days. That it's just not a thing that happens. Email lists are best for kind of recurring customers, so to speak. So if I have a lot of people already purchasing my music in the education space, I might email them occasionally just to get a kind of a, hey, I've got a couple new pieces out. If you're interested, check them out here. It's not for something like this. And that is critical to get across. So no email lists from any of you. All right, so my crowdfunding page, what should it look like? So a crowdfunding effort needs several things in order to succeed. Number one, it needs a low cost and affordable reward tier to start out with. So this means in the game development community, a lot of people tend to use the old thing of, hey, buy me a cup of coffee. And it'll be like $2 or $3 for the lowest one. Some people make their lowest one $1. Some people make their lowest $5. But I would recommend making your lowest one no more than $5, because it's a lot easier to get people to give you $3 than $6. $5 is a huge breaking point. Think about it. Anytime you're going out, you don't mind spending $5 getting a quick drink or a cup of coffee or something. But the moment it gets to be $5.50, $6, or the rough equivalent, this is all in USD, by the way, US dollars, people start getting a little bit sketchy. Like, is this really worth me giving money? That sort of thing, especially if you want to create kind of returning engagement from people. Now, we're going to talk a little bit about rewards here. You need meaningful rewards, and we'll talk about some good examples and bad examples, of course, of that. But basically, you can't just tell people, I need your money, give it to me now. Because you will get some success with that, but you'll get very small success compared to, oh, if you send me, if you pledge to me, like for instance, if I'm using Patreon, and if I say, if you send me $5 a month, you'll have a monthly behind the scenes, what am I composing now type thing. Or you might have, oh, if you're at like the $25 tier, once a month I do an ask me anything, ask the composer type thing for anything I'm writing. Or another popular one that I did for a while for the event that's still running, it's an esport, for anybody that knows what those are. That's still running without me leading it, fascinatingly enough. But one way that I was actually able to get a lot of people on the $10 tier for that was I actually did little mail outs of custom artwork. And that was just a beautiful little thing. It cost me $1.50 to print each one. And then I would just mail it out. So it'd be $2, $2.50 with postage. And it got me enough people, I was able to kind of push the event to the next level. So thinking outside the box like that can really be beneficial. And we'll look at some more specific examples here in a few moments. Now, the goals also need to be easy to understand. And this is something that can kind of get lost in the weeds, because occasionally we might think, oh, if you give me money, then that must mean that you know my art, and I can start talking about all this really technical stuff like, oh, I'll send you mock-ups, I'll send you, a soundscape, I'll send you demos, all that. Assume people know nothing. Assume people are just ignorant whenever they are, and they aren't ignorant, but just assume ignorance whenever you are trying to get them to donate, so that you can say, okay, no matter what your knowledge of my art is, you can understand what you're getting. So keep it the KISS principle, the keep it simple, stupid. That's a beautiful, beautiful thing. And I think it works really, really well here. Simplicity is bliss as far as that goes. And the other thing to keep in mind, frequent communication. I have bolded, underlined, italicized, and turned that phrase red on my screen for a reason. This is the most important thing. Once someone has backed you, whether it's one time or multiple times, you need to keep them posted on your project because you don't know when you might need them next. If they just donate to you once, $20, and they never hear from you again on how it's going, they're probably not going to give you $20 next time because they don't know where that $20 went. They don't know what's happening, and they don't even know if the project finished sometimes. And it's just not good for business, so to speak. So try to keep frequent communication and be transparent. Don't just say in this, as the purpose of this talk is for an orchestral recording, don't just say, I need $3,000 so I can do this, and then another $1,500 so I can go out to the session. You don't break it down like that. You have to break it down into effectively a consumer mindset. So instead of saying, oh, it's $3,000 for the recording session and this, you might say, oh, $3,000 are the remaining costs to hire out musicians and finish renting the performance space or the recording space. And that is how you create transparency without sort of giving away the inner workings, so to speak. Because again, transparency is key. People love transparency when you can have it. Now, there's also a danger here of being too transparent. You don't need to tell them, yes, because here are the current union rates in England, and here are the current flight rates from my area of the country over there, and then here's the picture of the hotel I want to stay in. Don't send them any of that stuff. You kind of just always need to assume that a medium level of transparency is the perfect amount. And the other thing I would caution against, I would personally advise against trying to say, oh, some of my crowdfunding is going towards me traveling to the location. People don't want to fund your travel. They want to fund their own travel. They're open to helping you create your own art, but they don't want to see you gallivanting around Europe. Now, you can happen to go there and pay your own way and maybe manipulate how the crowdfunding works on the back end, but you don't need to tell them, hey, this is also partly so I can go to the sessions and take part to help make the art better, because not everyone understands that part of the process of, hey, live feedback in a personal environment gets a better quality recording. Not everyone understands that. In fact, not even everyone in our own profession knows that. So that's something to keep in mind. So now we're going to dive a little bit into the reward tiers first. And this is all there is. It's nice and simple. It's not terribly complicated, but we'll walk through it. So having a $1 a month or a one-time $5, whatever is cheapest, reward tier as your low-cost point of entry. We talked about this at the beginning. You need something for kind of the everyman that, they don't have a whole lot of spending capital, but they want to help you make your art. And that's why the low reward tier is great. Because yes, $1 or $2 doesn't make a huge dent if I'm trying to raise $5,000 for a recording. However, if I can get 100 people to give $2 or $3 each, that's already almost 10% of it that I've knocked out with almost no extra brain power. So you need to be thinking about that a little bit. Now, as you're building these, you have to also keep in mind reasonable price point breaks. So you can't have your low tier $1 to $5 and then a $100 tier. Because what happens if I can give you $25? Well, if I just decide, well, instead of buying this new game that I was going to this month, I want to help fund your art and delay my game till next month. But $100, there's just no in between, so to speak. So having reasonable price break points. One that I like to think of is 5, 10, 25, 50, 100. So kind of doubling after a while. And that seems to really work. It's a good reward structure. Now, as far as rewards for them, this is where you have to get a little creative, and this is where we're going to talk about next. But ensure that your higher reward tiers have things that are actually worthwhile. But at the same time, you have to make sure that there's enough in there to really thank all those people giving $1 and $2, because it means a lot more for someone with less money to give you $1 or $2 than for a millionaire to give you $200. It's a weird concept for us to understand sometimes, but it's also very important when you're thinking about crowdfunding, because it really is crowdfunding, not just rich crowdfunding, not middle class crowdfunding, not lower class crowdfunding. It is crowdfunding. Everyone gets to do it. And as a result, everyone gets to feel that they have helped contribute. Now, the other thing is make sure to front load the rewards and not make people wait. What I mean by this is don't hinge everything on, okay, once the product is done, because in this case, you might not be recording until February or something. And if someone donates to you in October, what's in it for them now? Why can't they just donate later instead? Because obviously we need the money earlier on to secure things, secure flights, secure musician payments, etc. But what you need to do is start saying, hey, once you sign up, you'll get, weekly behind the scenes, or hey, you'll get, twice weekly update for me. You'll get XYZ. And that's whether you're doing monthly or one time. Because again, whether I'm giving you $5 once or $2 a month for 10 months, I kind of want to know what's going on the back end. I want to see where my money's going, and I want to see the value as soon as possible. And there's a lot of different ways to think about this. You can think about, again, behind the scenes stuff. If you also like doodling, if you're a graphic artist as well, you can feel free to give some stuff like that. I've seen some people literally just do like little stickers with their composer logo. There's a lot of different creative solutions they can come up with, but make sure that it's in your voice, so to speak. So don't just, don't like look at someone like my stuff and say, okay, well, Zach gives a behind the scenes tour of his stuff once every 6 months to show his studio. I'm going to steal that exact thing, especially if you don't really have much of a studio space to work with, because then you're just stealing someone else's reward, putting it where you go, where it doesn't quite make sense. Does that make sense for everyone? You don't want to, I guess, project someone else's ideas onto your own reward structure. You want to make sure that it is identifying with you. I can talk, I promise. And the next part is having a good pitch. Don't just stick up a link that says, I am a composer, give me money. Because spoiler alert, all composers need money at some point. And don't assume people following you have the cash or want to spend it on you. That's another huge thing. Do not assume that people have money. Just because you see them going to dinner every couple nights, that doesn't mean that they have the extra money to spare. Maybe that is what makes them happy, and that is the stretch of their budget, going to dinner every other night. You don't know. So don't assume that people have money. That is a huge mistake that I see some people make. Like they'll be like, hey, I saw you at dinner the other night and I was wondering if you'd be able to donate to this. Don't do that. Do not do that. It is a horrible assumption to make. Now, if you do happen to know, oh, my coworker or, my friend from school that I went with, they happen to be doing well right now, then that's okay. Then maybe approach them, say, hey, I was wondering if you'd like to back me on this, and just give them the crowdfunding link. And whether they give you $100 or $1,000, you thank them the same. Even if you know someone can give 8 times more than they did, just thank them anyways, because they went out of their way to give you some of their hard-earned money. And it is a really, really important concept to bring home. Now, and this is a big one, don't mention any unnecessary equipment upgrades unless that is your goal. So for instance, if in order to complete my piece for Eduardo, if I needed to get a new sound font in order to create something so I could realize it for the musicians better, so that they could have a better rehearsal process, I don't need to throw in, hey, I need an extra $200 for this. If you're going to do it, make sure it's just kind of wrapped up in the murkiness. So again, that medium level transparency, that would be a little too much transparency. Keep it in the middle. Don't let them know, hey, I had to upgrade this, or hey, in order to do it, I had to upgrade to the pro version of Dorico, which cost me a couple $100. Don't list that stuff unless it is actually your end goal, because people will just assume, oh, they're taking my money and gallivanting with it. And that is detrimental. You see this happen to a lot of content creators online. I'll look at, there's a great big shelf that happens around 10,000 subscribers on YouTube. It's a very fascinating thing because that's about the point where you can start making a lot of money, but the majority of them start making far less. And it's because they started monetizing everything. They started asking everyone for money at every single turn in an effort to make themselves full time. And in the end, they bite themselves in the butt. They shoot themselves in the foot, however you want to think about it. So do not overstretch. Do not overexert it. And then be clear and concise. Don't wrap up, don't list 3 paragraphs long. You need a 2-sentence pitch of, hey, I am working on this project. I am working on getting it recorded. I have an orchestra lined up, and I'm crossing the finish line and getting the rest of the funds together. That's all people need to know. Obviously, throw in a couple pieces in there, like, hey, the piece is called this, it's being recorded in the United Kingdom, whatever you want to throw in there to, again, give it your personal voice. But again, no more than a few sentences of a pitch, because anything past that, people are just going to zone out. They're just going to be like, this is uninteresting. I'd rather give to Boys and Girls Club $10. And obviously, we want to give to Boys and Girls Club, but I use that as an example of Boys and Girls Club is simple. We help children. That's their pitch in the end, at the end of the day. Do you want to help the kids? Sure, I'll help the kids. You need to think that simply. And then again, be transparent. Now, here's a list of some comedically bad reward types you can give. I will write you a short 1-minute piece of music. Do not make this a reward tier. Do not ever do that, because A, you're actually contracting yourself for more work for free, which is kind of just bad for business, so to speak, unless you really want to do it, sort of thing. But definitely don't do it for like a super low reward level, because you're just going to end up regretting it later. Not to mention, you're kind of overestimating your value to your social network, because not everyone's going to value your music the same. And you writing a 1-minute piece might not be worth much to them. They might value you as a friend, but not actually be that interested in your music, if that makes sense. Which is sad for us in the end, but it is a fact of life when it comes to this crowdfunding situation. I will send you a signed score or CD. This is a really overused thing, and I can tell you statistically, it does not actually work. This does not help get you extra backers for things. That is something that I see so many people do, and the majority of people that do it, they take that nosedive, and it's because they're overvaluing what their stuff is worth. Now, if you want to include something like that for like $100 tier or something, that's different, because at the $100 tier, they've earned it. They've earned a signed printed score. But that's up to your own personal interpretations, because you don't want to be spending more time and money giving them their rewards than what they gave you, if that makes sense. Because we want to thank them, but we don't want to owe our lives to them, so to speak. The other one that's kind of bad and just lazy, the thank you / Christmas cards. It's going to get thrown in a drawer. Like, that's really what's going to happen to your thank you note or your Christmas card that you give them. Now, if you get to the point where you have a lot of regular backers because you're doing a monthly system and you want to do kind of a Christmas card at one point just as a fun extra thing, that's different. But don't make that like a root cause for, hey, donate to me and you'll get a thank you note, because it's just going to get thrown in a drawer. People would probably rather just save the paper at that point. Now, the other one this one's listed on here not because I think it's necessarily bad, but because I think this one's a bit on the lazy side, and that is listing backers' names on a web page. That's something that it doesn't give them anything tangible, because it's like, hey, I backed this, and if you go to the composer's website and look on this one web page that's like 5 links away, then you can see my name on there. Again, it's not very valuable to them at that point. They want something that's like, hey, yeah, if you look at this person's YouTube video of it, you'll see me listed as a backer. That is much more valuable than just listing it on the back page of your personal website, if that makes any sense. And then the other one that's kind of a bad reward, only because it costs a lot of money and takes way more time than people think, t-shirts. I see so many people do t-shirts that it's not even funny. Unless you have an established brand, you are really coming out there as a composer, and you're just smashing out the gate, you don't need t-shirts. I don't need giant t-shirts that say Dr. Zachary Daniels, composer extraordinaire. That it just looks really vain after a while, and you're actually going to chase backers away with that, because it's going to be like, wow, how full of themselves is this guy anyways? And you don't want that. You want to be as humble as possible from the beginning through the rewards. Now here's some examples of some good rewards. Early access. You get to see the thing before anyone else. You get to hear it before anyone else. It's cheap for you to do. It's really easy for you to do. And it's something that's tangible. They can go to their friends and say, yeah, I got to hear this before anyone else because I was a backer. I heard this a month before it was published, or I saw it, etc., etc. Another good reward, I will send you a free copy of the recording for personal or streaming use when it's finished. That is a great reward because, again, low cost, low time investment, and it gets them something tangible, because then they can use it. You've automatically waived them the rights to use it for streaming, which is huge these days, especially if it's someone that, let's say you have a director friend and he might want to use it. That would be a huge thing for them. Now, obviously, you might want to put some stipulations in there, such as if, no redistribution, etc. But that's for you to work out with what you are most comfortable with. And again, I mentioned I will send you a free copy of the finished score signed. I would only use this for really high level backers. Like if you have a $250 backer, you can send them a free copy of the score printed once it's all done. I think that's the least we can do. And that's something that I think is a really great reward tier, because only people really invested in your music are going to give that 250 or so, or 100, whatever you want to make it. And at that point, having that is going to be like a little trophy that they can stick on their shelf, and they can say, yeah, I actually backed that piece of art, and here's my signed copy. And that's what makes it cool. But then if everyone gets it, because it's only at like the $20 or $25 tier, you've really watered down the actual tangible value of that. You have to kind of think of that supply and demand concept when it comes to your rewards. Another pretty good reward, discount code for scores and parts. This is something that not everyone will use, but if you happen to know other conductors or music educators in your life, they're always looking for cheap music. They're always looking for ways to get discounts. So if you offer them, hey, you can use this discount code, not just on this piece, but on all of my stuff. It's your discount code. You can use it. That is going to make them ecstatic, because not only did they get to help support new art, but if they really like your art, they get a discount. And as a tertiary benefit, and this is kind of that backdoor thing that I mentioned, you just gained kind of a customer for life, because they know who they can go to for cheaper music. Then they can go to your website and get 10-15% off anytime that they're looking for something new. And you just gained a lot more sales that way in the long run. So that's more kind of composer mindset than crowdfunding mindset, but we'll just consider that a free tidbit for today. And then another good one, like I mentioned, you'll be listed as a backer for all projects during the donation window. So if it's a one-time thing, you list it for the score that you're doing for Eduardo's project, for instance. And you just list it in the YouTube description. Maybe you put it as like a credits roll at the end. Things like that, like, hey, thank you to my backers, or thank you to my Patreon supporters, thank you to my GoFundMe donators, whatever you want to list on there. And then if it's a monthly thing, then I would just say anything you complete during that time that's a major thing, you list those people as a backer, because those people have effectively backed you during that time, and they are effectively to be thanked every time you do something. And that's a really easy way to thank them for supporting your art in the long run. And again, very low cost, basically no time once you get rolling with it. And then some final thoughts to wrap it up. Don't push it too often. Any more than once or twice a week is too much, and people are just going to hit the unfollow button because you're just annoying at that point. And to that point, I would also not do it through your professional composer pages, because, like, for instance, on Facebook, we often have our professional composer page, and then we have our personal thing. Don't push it too often on your professional page in particular. You can post the link there once or twice, certainly, but if people are starting to see more advertisements for backing you than updates on your art for your professional page, you're doing more harm than good in the long run. Yeah, you might get a few extra backers immediately, but you're really going to be feeling the sting in about a year or two when you wish you still had 300 followers and you're down to 120 because you were spamming everyone. You really have to think about that occasionally. And I would say casual marketing is the best marketing. Don't be overly formal about it. Just bring it up at lunch one day, post it on Facebook. You don't have to have a super elaborate thing. Just say something like, hey, I'm working on a recording project. I'm nearing the finish line. I'm 80% there. Donate if you want. You don't have to be super complicated, any of that. It's nice and straightforward. And then also be sure to consider if crowdfunding is the right strategy for you, because we've talked a lot about it. And do make sure that if you're doing the crowdfunding, you are actually doing it correctly. Because if you are just turning your Twitter feed, your Facebook feed, and your Instagram into donate to me pages, you're not really doing yourself a lot of good in the long run. And you might want to think, okay, can I actually trust myself to balance this against the core content of my page that my original supporters wanted to give me? And then your first crowdfunding steps will be a bit bumpy, but you'll push through. You'll make mistakes, you'll type silly things, you'll find reward tiers that work well, you'll find some rewards that don't work well, you'll find some things that work really well for most people, you'll find some things that scare a couple people off on a personal level, but it's really up to you personally to come up with things that are going to work. And again, I've just given you the tip of the iceberg, some examples to use. Tailor them to your own liking. Be sure to use them as much as you want and build on them. And be sure to kind of keep track, because if I try a reward, for instance, that, hey, and if you're in because I'm based in Oklahoma City, if you're in Oklahoma City too, I'm going to be getting together with all my backers in the area, and that becomes really popular. Sweet. But if I do it once or twice, only one or two people come out, probably not going to do that again. So just using that kind of extreme example as kind of a way of how you might manipulate this going forward. And then the final thing is, don't be entitled. We are asking people to support our art with their hard-earned cash. We are obligated to give them value for that proposition and not turn into effectively just donation machines. And that is the end of my presentation. I do hope it was somewhat beneficial for you folks.